everyone, my name is Ibreez and I currently work as a doctor in the NHS. Thank you so much for joining us on another lesson in our introductory course about the Beginner's Guide to PLAB. So I talked a little bit in our last lesson about what PLAB is, but in this lesson what we're going to discuss are if PLAB's right for you. If this is the first time you're checking out our channel, welcome. Basically what we do is we run a website that's totally free known as roadtok.com, and it will explain the ins and outs about everything related to the United Kingdom and what it takes for you to work as a doctor in the NHS. So if you've not already, please stalk us on all of our social media. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. So the PLAB exam itself, it doesn't have too many prerequisites really when we think about it. We'll talk more in depth about the prerequisites as we continue through this course, but here's some general things that you need to take into consideration. First of all, as a medical student, if you're watching this, you might be wondering, is this the thing that I want to do? PLAB is something that will give you GMC registration to work in the United Kingdom. So if you want to work in the United Kingdom, guess what? PLAB's a great way to do it. Alright, but that doesn't mean there's a hard and fast rule that you have to be a medical student or you have to be an intern. It doesn't matter where you are in your career. PLAB is an exam that has no age restrictions, okay? A lot of times people are confused and concerned and they're like, well, if I'm 50, if I'm 60, can I still take PLAB? And yes, you can. If you meet the prerequisites that we're going to talk about in a little bit, you don't have to worry about anything else, okay? There isn't anything that'll prevent you from proceeding except if you don't meet the criteria to apply, and age is not one of those criteria. Another thing a lot of people get really concerned or confused about is, will PLAB give them a lesser form of GMC registration? We already talked about in our last lesson the 3 types of GMC registration, and that's really it, guys. There's nothing more to it than that. GMC registration does not discriminate on which route that you take. If you take it via PLAB, if you take a postgraduate qualification, or if any of the sponsored pathways, it's not going to give you a weaker GMC registration that won't allow you to do as much as anyone else, okay? So if you get your GMC registration via PLAB and your colleague, let's say, gets their GMC registration via postgraduate route, your GMC certificate for registration will look exactly the same. It won't say what registration route you came by, and it doesn't matter at all. When you all go to apply for jobs, be it non-training or training jobs, what they're going to be looking at for merit is the criteria that you fulfilled by way of, do you have all the stuff that the training, job would want, or the non-training job is asking for, the person's specifications and your competencies. They don't care about which exam route you took to get your GMC registration. So that should be the least of your concerns when you're considering whether or not PLAB is something that you want to take. Now let's talk about what you need to take PLAB. First of all, you need to have graduated from medical college. You need to have passed your final medical exam. It's not like an exam like the USMLE that you can take during medical school. You need to have completely passed. You also need to prove your English fluency before you can take PLAB exam, and that is either via the IELTS exam or via OET. Both IELTS and OET have their own requirements about what you need to achieve in order for it to be eligible for you to take PLAB, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But after you have basically graduated from medical school, you've passed IELTS or OET with acceptable marks, you can then take PLAB 1. You are then eligible to open a GMC online account, put in your IELTS or OET results, and book a PLAB 1 exam. After you pass PLAB 1, you can then take PLAB 2. As we said in the last lesson, you cannot take PLAB 2 before you take PLAB 1. And again, PLAB 1 itself is an exam that is written. It is available in most countries around the world, but for PLAB 2 you have to come to the United Kingdom. You do not need to complete internship in order to take PLAB, but as we mentioned already, by having completed an acceptable pattern of internship and then completing the PLAB exams, you would be eligible for full GMC registration. If you only take the PLAB exams and you've not completed an acceptable pattern of internship, you would have provisional registration. With this provisional registration, you cannot apply for any non-training jobs in the United Kingdom. They need you to at least do internship either back in your home country or somewhere else that's of an acceptable criteria, or you would have to apply for the United Kingdom Foundation Program, which is UK's internship. After you then complete those internships, you would get full GMC registration, allowing you to proceed as you wish. To give a little insight to all of this, I'll talk about what I did and give some suggestions as to what I think would be best for you all. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take IELTS, and I did that during my internship. I also took PLAB 1 during my internship. A lot of people ask, well, should I do PLAB 2 during my internship as well? Because then, you know what, I complete my internship, I'll have GMC registration, and I can go directly to work in the United Kingdom, and there's no concern about gaps or any delays in the process. Now, technically speaking, you can take PLAB 2 during your internship, but because you have to travel to the United Kingdom, it would create an unnecessary gap in the middle of your internship. Whether or not GMC would accept this gap is really up to them. We can't comment on it, but we just personally think it's a bit of a headache then to just tell GMC, look, guys, actually I took out a month or two and, I went to the UK to take this exam, because you could just plan it such that, you did your IELTS or your OET during the beginning of your internship, let's say. You prepared for the PLAB 1 exam, you took the PLAB 1 exam, you completed your internship, and you already had the PLAB 2 booked right after your internship was ended. So basically, you really wouldn't be having much of a gap or any sort of time waste or delay if that's what your concern is. So don't think that you have to get everything done in that 1 year. Really pace yourself and make sure that you're making an appropriate decision. Don't try and put a lot of unnecessary gaps during your internship. Even if GMC does accept it, they will ask you a lot of questions and they'll want to know why you did it then when you could have done it later on. And it's just, in our opinion, something that you could easily avoid. So like I said, what I did was I did IELTS, I took PLAB 1, and as soon as my internship ended, I took PLAB 2, got myself GMC registration, and then I started applying for jobs. So you can also think about that route as well, you guys. So think, all right, yes, you've graduated from medical school, you've gone ahead and you've taken your IELTS or your OET, you've booked the next PLAB 1 date. In the meantime, think about, what date would be appropriate for you to take PLAB 2, finish up your internship, take your PLAB 2 exam, get your GMC registration, and you're set. You don't need to really overthink it, and it's not, I know a lot of us get really concerned about the rat race behind it, that I need to get GMC registration before, someone else, or maybe there's not going to be a job if I don't hurry up and do this, and really, it's not healthy, and it's not something that you really need to be concerned about. What you should be aiming for is what makes sense for you. Don't put unnecessary constraints on yourself that don't exist. The process is there. You've got a lot of time to complete everything. So go ahead and, go about it in your own way. All right. Now, after this whole thing, I hope you will get an idea of what we're talking about. But what we're going to go on to next is more about what you need to know about the PLAB exams in depth when you're considering how you're going to go about taking them.